I've got to let you in on a little secret.
Oh no.
Well, yeah, well, you know, we're in the throes of Glastonbury at the minute, and there was this whole thing, oh, who are these secret acts coming on?
Yeah.
And there was like, oh, I wonder who Patchwork. I knew that they were Pull Along.
Right.
Do you know why I knew?
No.
Because they weren't there to celebrate 30 years of their first Glastonbury. It was to celebrate them being the first Albumble episode, which is a year ago today.
Moving on from that delusion, I think...
Yes.
Oh,
hello.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
I mean, Jarvis didn't mention that.
No, but he's very noble, and he doesn't want to point people out.
Okay.
A free ticket might be nice, but
Right. Okay. Yeah. I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I thought you were going to announce that one of our podcast recordings was going to be one of the mystery acts. Appearing
no, I don't. Well, you never know.
At some point,
could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps they'll start doing that with podcast festivals and having like mystery acts or some obscure name like the Rotary Lawnmower podcast. Although I suspect that probably exists.
Yes, that probably does exist.
And it's probably a Richard Herring project because most of them are. Not that I dislike the man, but
yes.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Albumble, where we review albums we didn't review the first time. I'm Anne.
And I'm not. It's the first time we've done that this series, I think.
Yes, it is. We didn't do that last time.
No. I mean, that's the thing about catchphrases.
Yes.
If you're not going to bother with your catchphrase, then...
Don't do the catchphrase.
So, whatever you do, don't do the catchphrase. Oh,
that could be the catchphrase.
Okay.
Right.
It's been a warm day today.
It's very warm at the moment.
I think the heat may have addled my brain.
Yes. It's been busy as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, we're in Glastonbury fever.
Wow.
Tepid.
I think it might actually be sunstroke.
Yeah.
from being out at sports day yesterday.
Not the band Sunstroke.
No, is there a band called Sunstroke?
What am I thinking of?
Are you thinking of Sunstroke by Chicane?
Oh yes, I am.
Right,
That's
okay.
the song. And Germany have scored.
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea having the football on in the background because I'm starting to work out where the boys' lack of focus comes from. Oh look, something shiny!
Shiny
oh, there's
things.
A crisp packet floating in breeze.
Oh, crisp packet, where? Right, should we start off with anything to report back on past podcast people? Obviously, we've just talked about Pulp.
Yes.
Anything else you want to discuss?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We've got your man Anthony Schmierich.
He's at Glastonbury.
He did a live thing on Thursday night, Thursday night, which I think was well worth seeing.
Yes.
Because he's a lot of fun, and I think he's a very engaging person to have on your TV programme.
We have also, talking about festivals, Joost Klein returned to the circuit with Pink Pop.
Oh right, yeah.
Is it Pink Pop?
Pink Pop
in Belgium.
Yeah. Which
seemed to go down well. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, looking at the list there, I can mention Dan Lessac has a new album out of music which is for, I think it's Tron Legacy.
Oh.
The Disney backed computer game, which he has spent a long time working on.
That sounds very him.
Oh,
that genre.
I think it's a good commission for him, but also he has said, I'm quite liking the idea that I'm going to be able to get back to recording some of my own music for a change. But yeah, that's well worth listening to.
Yes, so the a last cursory mention. There is an advert going on at the moment for a Polestar car.
Yes.
Which has an instrumental version of one of Alphaville's songs off the album that we did a review of.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I was like, I know this song. And
Yeah.
then I had to do the thingy with the phone.
The old Shazam.
Yeah, except that the one I have isn't called Shazam.
Oh,
It's called something else.
Shazoom.
Shazoom. Right. So should we have a little chat about...
I've got a new app on my phone. It's called What's That Song, Derek?
Should we have a talk about this album?
Oh, should we say what the album is?
So
today's album
is Scritti, Politti's Cupid and Psyche 85.
Yes. Which is their second album.
Yes.
I say there. It's really Green Gartside's second album because he is the band because
he's the common thread, isn't he?
Aside from this album and the one that follows it, there's pretty much a complete turnover of staff.
Yes, he's
in the
like
interim.
the sugar babe. If there was one sugar babe in every reiteration of Sugar Babes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Should we have a
Yeah.
chat?
Let's do that.
Sorry. Should we have a chat? So, as you alluded to before, Scritti Politti had been around a surprising amount of time before this album, which was probably the one that most of their well-known hits have come from.
And I think it also cemented in people's mind the sound that they associate with being Scritti Politti.
Yes.
Which we will discuss more of shortly.
And I think I was partially inspired to give you this album because one week when you were away, I was watching the Top of the Pops,
BBC4 Friday nights,
and they then have the weird. We'll just give you a random 70s or 80s one.
Yeah,
and they literally had the Smiths' Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now.
Yeah.
Followed by a track on this album.
Okay.
Now, you could say that those two are quite far apart, but in some ways they are extremely close.
Yes, yeah.
But I thought that was a very odd, a very interesting juxtaposition, especially because we have reviewed the Smiths beforehand. So, like a contemporaneous understanding of the fact that you can talk about similar issues, but in very, very different ways and genres.
Okay.
So as the title suggests, this was in 1985.
Although had its roots from a couple of years. He'd been working on this album since 1983.
Yes.
From what I've read.
Yes.
And then obviously we had an astonishing 4 singles.
Technically 5.
Oh, go on. Which one's the 5th?
So Hypnotise.
Yeah.
Was a no, not Hypnotise. What one of them was only released in France.
And that was released after the album was.
Yes.
So there were a total of 5 singles released from a 9-track album, which is quite ambitious, I think.
Yeah.
And obviously a 6th one with the one that was released in France in a remixed form as well, which means that that's quite a sought-after record now. So yeah, it was also quite interesting to have 4 singles released before the album is actually put out there. And also interesting that of those 4 singles, it was the 1st and the 4th that performed the best.
Yes. Whether that was on purpose to kind of... Obviously, if you're going to have a big single, you don't want the last single to dive bomb and then release the album.
No. But I think now we're so used to here's the single, a week later, here's the album, that it's quite a juxtaposition of how things work then. And I think there was also a lot of tinkering going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
Because I get the impression Green Gartside's a bit of a perfectionist.
No.
And he wants things absolutely as he
Yes.
perceives it in his head.
Yes. Which, if you're going to do something properly,
Yes.
you might as well do it.
The only thing I would say that is slightly a detrimental factor of that is that sometimes this album feels a little bit too polished to me.
Yes. But that was very 80s, I think.
I think that's fair. But I'm sure there are more interesting versions of some of these songs which were left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my personal opinion.
So should we start with side one?
Side one.
On the album, which is The Word Girl.
Yeah.
So this has a kind of slight reggae skank.
Yes.
Bass line.
I think it's easy to forget just how often reggae transferred over into the mainstream and got chart success in the 80s.
Yes.
Because it's not a sound that we hear a great deal now. We hear we get bits of Afrobeat and we get it as an influence on other things.
Yes.
But to hear something like this, which is a straight influence by reggae stuff, was fairly commonplace in 1985.
I guess also reggae being a music of colour as well. This doesn't sound like it's trying to be reggae.
No, it's
very much an influence underneath everything else.
Yeah, I think this is a pop soul record with a reggae beat underneath it to drive it along and to give it some push underneath.
Yes.
And also some distinctiveness.
So there is a lot going on in this record.
Yeah.
On this whole album. And with this, we start with the whole political writing.
Yeah.
I did go down some burrows about the kind of philosophical reasoning behind, but I didn't understand half of it, to be frankly honest. But they are very much influenced by Kant and Marxism and lots of other people, and basically talking about how certain words sound more appealing than others. So, for example, the word girl is in a lot of pop records, just as sweet is and baby, and those words in particular crop up a lot throughout these, just because the sound of them is seen to be, or heard to be, or thought to be quite resonant. But also we've got to talk about Green's delivery, which is, you don't get anybody who sings like that.
No, he's very distinctive, isn't he?
It's not falsetto.
No,
but it's not a quote unquote normal voice.
No,
it's quite whispery. It's very high in the register.
I'd also be interested to know how much production was put on his voice.
I don't think there was, because
listening to this, I find it quite tricky to pick out the words a lot of the time.
Yes.
Now that may be down to my slightly faulty ears, and years of horrendous abuse from other aspects for that. But the lyrics, I went back in a couple of cases and read what they were.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I wouldn't have known exactly what they were just from listening to the songs.
But again, I think that goes back to the sound of things is just as important as what the words
absolutely
mean.
Yeah.
Which a lot of what is in this album is derived from.
Yeah.
But it's quite the tune of this song in particular is quite simplistic.
Yes.
Almost nursery rhyme-ish.
Yeah.
In the chorus.
And this is one of the more structured,
yes,
or one of the more simply structured
yes.
songs, rather, on this album. Or at least I thought so.
No, yes, I think that's
so.
Fair
This was
enough.
the fourth single released
yes.
from the album. This was released just before the album was, a few weeks beforehand, and was also the most successful one, getting to number 6 on the UK charts.
Excellent.
Track 2 is Small Talk.
Small Talk. So this is very poppy. Has got all the kind of a synthy bits coming in and out, samples here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
I've said it sounds almost boy bandish. I could imagine, New Kids on the Block coming out 5 years later, but with a dance routine.
Do you want to know the references I found?
Go on.
They were Jackie Graham and 5 Star.
Yes, they do.
They were doing a lot of those sorts of sounds where you have the sort of synthesized brass and things like that, and the stabs in there to emphasise,
and the guitar bits that kind of came in and out.
Yeah,
which sounded a bit kind of Michael Jackson-y.
Yes, I think there's influence from there here as well.
A bit. You could tell this wasn't going to be a single.
Yeah, I think that's true as well.
Because it's almost too poppy.
Yeah.
It's almost like normally you have like your pop singles and then you have the weird single, the weird song that is not going to be an album.
Yeah.
The weird song on the album which is never going to be a single. This is the other way round. It's so poppy.
Yeah.
It's so commercial that it was just never going to fit the subtext of what Scritti Politti were.
No.
But quite a nice song. It does follow straight from the last one, even though it's very different.
Yeah.
It does keep up the oeuvre of what's to come.
Yes, I think it sets the first 2 songs set the scene very well as to this is the world in which we are living here. So track 3 is the second single that was taken from the album, released late in 1984. Absolute got to number 17. Now, I wasn't familiar with this one.
Were you not?
No, I knew Would-Be's and The Word Girl. I didn't know this.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm a little bit upset I didn't know it. I really like this.
Again, a lot of the things that we talked about that happen in Small Talk also happen in here.
Yes.
But the samples and the way that it's produced is much more structured in a kind of almost like a punkish but in a soul way.
Yeah.
And you've got the do 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 at the end bit where it kind of goes all a bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
And also these songs as well are quite long in modern. They are well over 4 minutes, but they don't feel long. They fill the time.
I don't think that's a particularly unusual thing. There were quite a lot of albums, particularly in pop, soul, and of course dance music was coming to this table as well, where the album versions were longer than the single versions tended to be. I absolutely love the drum sounds in this, particularly that big explosive kick bass that's going on. That's really good.
Yes.
I think this is the most obvious pop single on the album. Not the most obvious pop song, but to me, as a pop single, I would have thought this would have been the big hitter from the album.
Yes.
Whether after this sort of stalled at number 17, I said.
It still was good in 80s.
It was, but I suspect if they expected this to go on and be more successful than the first single, then perhaps that's why there was sort of a step back and the album was pushed back another 6 months.
Yes.
I think the production all the way through this feels well ahead of its time.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it hasn't aged particularly well in terms of if you were going to say to someone, tell me what era this is from,
You'd know.
You would, but it's really, really nicely done. There are no sharp edges anywhere on this. And there is an awful lot of effort has gone into making this sound as polished as it does.
Right, we'll move on now. A little bit of a handbrake turn to track number 4, A Little Knowledge, which is, I guess, the ballad.
Yeah.
It's not the only slow song. Because obviously I'd say the word girl is quite slow.
Yes.
But has a paciness to it.
Yeah.
This is very much almost very empty ballad.
Yeah.
The backing track is almost non-existent in places.
Quite
compared
ethereal in places, yeah.
Go on.
So I was going to say the presence of Brenda J. Nelson's voice in this as well is quite a counterpoint to a lot of other things that are going on this album, which are just about Green's voice.
Yes.
And we have a second voice introduced here, and it changes the dynamic of the song. I mean, you obviously said it's the ballad on the album, but it also changes the dynamic of how it's working.
Yes. I found reading the lyrics to this really interesting, because if you were to read the lyrics, you might think that it wasn't a duet.
Right.
Because if you read the lyrics, it reads like one person saying the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which makes you think, is this two people, or is it like Green is saying his words and she's saying the words that are in his head, which he's not saying? Or is it the other woman?
Do you mean that in a startling turn of events, we have done 2 albums in a row which have a song on which has one narrator voiced by 2 voices? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is complete chance.
Yes. But I mean, it does it could be 2. It's just the way that sometimes you think, not sometimes you think, you can listen to it.
Yeah.
And because their voices are actually quite similar, because her voice is quite soft and ethereal and high, you do start thinking to yourself, I wonder whether this is another person or an inner voice or something. Because you could read it as 2 people, but you could also read it as one, which makes it quite interesting. I think it would also be quite hard to sing as one person, unless you chopped it up and had yourself
added a few more bars into it. Yeah, it would.
Yes, but it's quite an interesting track. I'd say the verses are much more interesting than the the verses are much more interesting than the choruses. Yeah, which is much more bog standard commercial ballad. Whilst the verse is structured slightly more interestingly.
It's also worth remembering that there wasn't a huge amount of sort of pop soul balladry going on in the mid-80s. Either side of it, there was a fair bit, but this is I think something of an island in that. So the final track on side 1 is Don't Work That Hard.
So this is one of the other album tracks.
Yeah.
Again, we've got the funky brass and the bass.
Yeah.
I felt like on this track, the guitar bits were. I don't think we really needed those. I think they were possibly just put in to make it fit in.
You see, I think you'll find what's happening here.
Right.
Is we have a gimmick battle royal going on with the samplers and the synths and everything like that. And there are so many different stabs and punctuation marks put through this song. this, I think, is probably the song on the album that is the furthest ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to how many sounds are in this, and you think, oh, there was that record a couple of years later that used that approach or used that sort of stab in it. I really like how upbeat it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think this gives us a clue that Green is going to be interested in hip-hop later on. I mean, it takes him a good while to get to his hip-hop phase. It's another 14 years away. But there are clues to that in here as well. And I think there are a lot of interesting things going on with the song structure and how things are put together, the bridges that are used between different parts of the song. And I really enjoyed that. And I found it very engaging, even though I didn't understand a lot of what was going on musically.
Yes. So. It is. I guess maybe this was like a bit of a test out. We've had the ballad. We've had the song that was too poppy. But now we've got the song that's not a single.
It's the gimmick battle royal.
It's the. I'm just going to try some stuff out.
Yeah.
See how it works. On an auditory basis, and see if my fans like it. Yeah, that people enjoy it.
But I think this was a really enjoyable song.
Yes,
because obviously I have a liking of upbeat stuff more than I do balladry. But I thought there was a lot going on here, and it's a lot to enjoy, especially given the era that it was made in. Are we going to flip over to side 2?
We are going to flip over.
And single number 5 from the album, making a slightly disappointing number 48 in the UK, but not entirely surprising given that the album was out by now, is Perfect Way. I had to listen to this one about 3 times before I could write something down about this. Because I was trying really hard to write something that didn't mention Phil Collins' Sussudio.
Was that before or after this?
Right, here's an interesting thing. Sussudio was released January 85.
Oh, right.
I am sure that this would have been recorded by then.
Yes.
I don't know. There may even have been promos, tapes going out to people by then.
Okay.
And there is so much about this which feels very slightly familiar, particularly with that aforementioned Phil Collins record.
I'd never actually put those two together, but now
I'm sure there are other things, because there are a lot of very 80s sounds going on in the synth and the electronics of this.
Yes.
I personally would have released it earlier as a single, because I think this would have been a bright, uplifting pop song. I think it'd have got a lot of daytime radio airplay, and I think this has also got the most, I don't know quite what the right word is, classical pop song structure to it. This is a pop song composition that you can recognise from other songs as well. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. So what you just said there about it being a very pop structure is probably one of the reasons why this was their big hit in America. Yeah. So I think Scritti Politti in America are basically seen as one-hit wonders.
Right, okay.
Because this is the song everybody knows them for. And if you go on Spotify, this is their most played Spotify track by a huge margin.
Crikey.
By millions.
Yeah.
So it was such a big hit in the US that this song was, quote-unquote, air fingers, covered by Miles Davis.
Okay.
And then this is where the history of pop music is a weird thing.
Yeah.
Is that Miles Davis then repaid the thanks for being able to do this cover by doing the trumpet on Oh Patty.
Oh, right, okay.
So that's how they basically got to work together.
Excellent.
And that happened not long before he actually died.
Right. Okay.
So yes, this is quite a well-known song. It's got lots of strings to it, literally, because there are like strings in it. There's but kind of like poppy bits. There's a very strong chorus.
Yeah.
Very repetitive chorus.
Yeah.
And then you've got the jung 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 bits in the middle. Kind of slightly dance music before it's time.
Yeah.
You know, I almost feel you get the strings of a Back to Life with that.
Yeah.
Jum, jum, jum. But yes, this was not a big hit in the UK, which is an absolute shame.
Yeah.
Because I think it should have been.
Yeah. Just came a little bit too late, I think.
It did, I think. But
okay.
yes. Right.
On to track 7.
Yes.
Lover to Fall, which was the French single.
So this, to me, has a very 60s feel to it.
Okay.
In the structure. Obviously not in the production, but in the way it's got that kind of sharp... I might even say that kind of yeah beat, which might have been why it might have gone down well in France, I don't know. I'd say it feels quite empty musically. This is more about the lyrics and the tune that Green is singing.
Yeah.
There's lots of very long words in this.
Yeah.
And it's obviously him having a bit of a high philosophical conversation with somebody who cares.
Yeah.
Or somebody who knows what they're talking about. It does feel very different. But, I mean, it's a nice enough song. It doesn't feel too out of kilter with everything else that's on there.
No.
But it does feel a bit of an odd... I mean, maybe we would have to listen to the remix.
Yeah.
Maybe to see if it had something... Maybe it was used in an advert. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I'm... Again, I felt we were a little bit back on the gimmick battle royal territory here with a lot of the effects and things that were being tried out in the song. But there's a lot of distinctly mid-80s devices going on in this, which I found perfectly enjoyable.
Yeah.
I could understand perhaps why it was released to a European market. Again, I had a look online. I couldn't find the remix that was released in France out there. I'm sure it is somewhere. But yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I thought there was a lot of interesting things going on in there which demand more than one listen to understand everything that's going on.
Yes.
I suspect the single version of it might be simplified down and have some of the bells and whistles sections of it taken out and turned into more of a coherent 3-minute pop song. But I may be wrong.
Yes.
They may have made it even more mad.
Maybe.
Track 8 is the big successful single, Would Be's.
So, as you said, this is one of the more famous songs.
Yes.
Very bassy.
Yeah.
You've got that kind of bass line going through, and then you've got the syncopated guitar riff that comes in every so often. The vocal is quite talky. There's not actually that much in terms of vocal dexterity, at least in the verse.
Yeah.
It's a bit more, I won't say a lot more, but it's a bit more interesting in the chorus.
There's not really much of a chorus going on here, is there? I mean, there's not in the way that the 80s is famous as it's stereotyped for being sort of the era of the big sing-along chorus. That is definitely not going
No.
on here. Which, to an extent, makes me quite surprised that A, this was the first single off the album, and B, it was hugely successful.
I guess two things with that. Number one, it's got the name of a famous person in it.
Yeah.
So people were thinking, oh, it's going to have a sample of her,
Yeah.
or it's going to have her on it,
Yeah.
or something. And obviously you've got the title, which is Would Be's,
Yeah.
be with in capital letters, spelled out
Yeah.
wrongly.
Yeah.
I think, oh, you know, what's that about? Oh, I'll have a listen to that kind of thing. I think there was a lot of intrigue
Yeah.
about this, and I can understand that at the time, just as it probably does now on 80s radio stations, it's very ear-catching.
Yeah.
It's very individual. And obviously we've got the use of the word would be
Yes.
being a homophone
Yeah.
of not the Clean Bandit track.
Yeah.
But also we have then...
That's rather be.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that is.
That's all right now.
And then we've also got the homophone for B-E-E-Z. Easy.
Yeah.
Which I only actually thought about that recently.
Sorry, I will just correct myself. I did say it was the most successful, second most successful one. This got to number 10, whereas the word girl got to number 6.
Yes.
My apologies.
Yes, there's lots of references to philosophical arguments and things about, he keeps on saying about doing nothing.
Yeah.
And about, you know, things that nothing is the opposite of anything. So
Yeah.
so it's like there's I do anything or you do nothing.
Do you think this was Green angling for an early slot in Dictionary Corner?
Possibly. That'd be a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, next down, kind down.
got a lovely young man from South Wales. Go on, Green, get outside.
Yeah, although he's not really that young.
No, I know, he's not that. No.
Yes, it was his 70th birthday last week.
Good Lord. Okay.
Which I also didn't know about when choosing this album.
Yeah.
That was just by chance. But yes, it's a very 80s, very stylish,
Yeah.
soulful dance kind of mix up of lots of different things.
Yes. Whilst not pandering to being any of them,
Yes.
really. So, now, speaking of not the obvious single, which, in my opinion, this
Yes.
wasn't. Hypnotise was the third single from the album. Peaked at a very mediocre number
Yes.
68 in the UK charts. And whereas it paid off for Would-Be's, it didn't pay off for this one.
Yes.
There are a lot of musical expeditions during this song. So you think you understand where the structure's going,
Yes.
and then it wanders off somewhere else for a bit
Yes.
and comes back again.
I think it is a very interesting song.
Yes.
I'm not so sure that it lends itself necessarily to a single.
No.
Especially when the other singles are quite traditional or more traditional.
Yeah.
This has got, it's quite choppy changey, slightly harder to listen to.
Yeah.
The edges on the changes are a lot rougher.
Yeah. I wouldn't say they're rough. I'd say they're, or if they are rough, they're done intentionally.
Yes.
That way, I think, which is interesting.
Yes. And you've also got, again, female vocalists
Yes.
on this, which do a lot of the earwormy bits in between the bits of singing.
Yeah.
Because it's actually quite difficult to think about which bit's actually the chorus.
Yeah.
Because you've got like the verse bit. I think you can see where the verse is, but then the chorus is a bit chopped up.
Yeah.
Because you've got the bits where the girls go hypnotise. That bit. Is that the chorus, or is it the oh, she got another to you? That
you see,
bit.
that's what I would have thought was the chorus out of it. But again, perhaps that's just left there to say this is not the obvious classical pop song construction. Go figure it out for yourself.
Yes. So it's a bit of a weird mishmash of an album that actually works as a whole.
Yeah, I think it does.
And it's, as I said when I chose this, it's an album that's kind of been forgotten about.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the hobnobs and the people who know their music kind of harp on about it.
I think it's also worth listening to this after listening to their 1981 album as well, which is a very different experience.
Oh, yes.
And I did read in one of the articles that I read about this that Green said when he was being interviewed about this album that perhaps 5 or 6 years ago I'd have spat at these songs. But change is good. Yeah. And it's true. It's something...
All of his albums have done that, though. Yeah. If you know the one that got nominated for the Mercury Award sounds nothing like these.
No.
Although you might say as an album it is a very Scritti Politti Green Gartside album.
Yes, yeah. But no, a very interesting album to experience.
And just as a little aside, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to discuss too much now, but if you look at the people involved in this album, there are a few names on the list where you go, oh, that's interesting. Like Simon Climie is involved in one of the tracks on this one.
Yeah.
And there's people who've done Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And all, you just read down the list and go, oh gosh, they were obviously getting in the people that they really wanted to work on this album because they knew their
onions.
Stuff.
Their synthesized onions.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think what I would say to end this small chapter is that it's quite interesting how some of the albums that we've done, there have been like things in certain songs and they've been quite disparate.
Yeah.
While some albums, it's about the vibe.
Yes.
I think this is very much a vibes album. It's very much here is my stylistic choice.
Yeah.
Let them infiltrate your ears.
Yeah.
Is basically what this album is. It kind of works.
I have seen albums in the past criticised by reviewers for being this is the 5th song on the album and it's the 5th different style.
Yeah.
And I can understand why that sort of thing can irk reviewers because they want to listen to a collection of songs and have an overall opinion about them. But then similarly you notice this quite a lot with Glastonbury. There are bands who are quite one note.
Yes.
And whilst it's nice to listen to a couple of their songs or have their songs in the middle of a mixtape or something like that, if you listen to a full album, it gets a bit of a drudge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's certainly a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was last time.
Yes, that was this time.
This time.
Yeah.
So it's your turn to choose the pickings for next time.
It is. I just went upstairs and had a look through the stack of CDs that I brought back from Belgium earlier in the year.
Okay.
And I'll work on the basis that we're not going to start repeating artists yet.
Okay, yeah.
Despite how interesting Dan's new album is, we won't go there just yet.
We might do that as our Patreon exclusive. If you ever get that far, not.
If we ever get that far, you can send us hate mail, genuinely. If we ever start doing things like that, or adverts for True Speed, if we start doing adverts for True Speed, then
we've gone to hell in a handcart.
We've sold our souls to the fibre internet devil. Well, we're definitely not getting advertising off it now, are we?
No. Anyway, let's talk about Belgium.
Yes. One of the other albums I bought, actually at exactly the same time as the Dan album, in Top Disc in Torhout, which I do highly recommend, especially as he's got a huge bookcase full of 7-inch singles at the back of the store now.
Nice.
Which, if you spend enough money in there, I think he just says, "Nah, it's all right. You don't need to pay for them."
Really?
Yeah. I don't guarantee that's going to happen every time though. No, the other album I bought in there was by the Belgian Eurovision act, Gustav.
Oh, Gustav!
And it's the album Look At Us Now.
Oh, can I have a little spoiler?
Go on.
I've heard it's a bit of a potty mouth. Or is it not that bad?
It's not that. It's not.
Oh, right,
it's
okay.
not all the way through.
I had heard from a few people that he had a bit of a potty mouth, but I didn't know whether they just meant in general or on the album.
There is a bit of it going on. Obviously, we don't want to preview too much.
Okay.
I've listened to it. I think I've only listened to it through it once.
Okay.
It surprised me.
Oh.
And
John.
we can explain why in the next podcast.
Oh,
God.
da, da, da.
Oh, I feel like such a corporate whore when I do things like that. It sounds like I've been trained at Global Radio or something.
So, we will be back in the middle of the month with, what's it called again? Gustav's album is called...
Oh, Look At Us Now.
Look at Us Now.
Do you want to take a run up at that?
Look at Us Now.
Look At Us Now.
And is that available on streaming places
It is
and
on
things?
streaming services. I have only seen physical copies of it in Belgium.
Okay. Go to Belgium.
But it's quite widely available in Belgium, particularly in the Flemish part of Belgium. So
go and have a listen to that. Go and find him on social media and YouTube and...
I think if you do want...
And Scouse Chippies.
If you do want physical copies of it, I believe it's available from Fnac.
Oh!
So Fnac.be will be carrying copies of that.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's on Amazon and places like that where somebody will rip you off blind for it.
Oh, gosh. Right. So if you want to go and have a listen to that...
Please do.
Please do. Well, unless they hate it. Unless that's...
Well, I don't know.
Do.
I think by now you get the sort of universe that this podcast lives in. There isn't much stuff that we can point at and say, I really don't like this.
No.
Because we don't...
We're not haters. Well,
more to the point, I don't think there would be any point in the two of us sitting here talking about 12 tracks of an album that we just don't like. If you don't enjoy
that's true.
being in the company of the people who make the album, then there's no point, is there?
Hurrah.
Right. So.
Right. So if you want to listen to that and come back in a few weeks' time, if you've got anything you want to say, you can find us at Albumble on Twitter.
Yeah.
And various other places.
Or on some of them, of course, because we couldn't get our first choice of username, we are known as Bum Albal. Yeah. Although, strangely, Bum... No, I'm not going to go there.
No. Right. Should we go and get some Belgian drinks then?
Yes.
Yes! Right. We will see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.